You ever walk onto your own land supposedly and the first thing you hear is, "You smell like failure. This neighborhood doesn't do charity cases." That was my welcome party, courtesy of Marina Ashford Kessler. She was standing there on the splintered porch of my uncle's old cabin, light blue designer suit gleaming like some kind of warning, pearl necklace flashing in the sun, and a look in her eyes like I'd just tracked mud across her marble floors. She had a clipboard thick enough to stop a bullet and a perfume that tried to choke out the clean pine air from 6 feet away. 30 days, she said, tapping that clipboard. Tear this eyesore down, or we'll do it ourselves and bill your corpse. Just like that. I guess in her mind, every square foot in Madison County belonged to her precious HOA. Funny thing, though, while she was threatening me, I was holding a piece of paper dated 1869 that proved her 312-home luxury development, her own $4 million mansion. All of it sat illegally on land that had been Sheridan ground since Lincoln was president. She had no idea who she was dealing with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up standing toe-to-toe with Marina, let me take you back 3 weeks to the day my whole life blew sideways. Divorce attorney's office, leather furniture, and the cold stink of endings. I signed away 15 years of marriage with a few strokes of a pen. My ex got the house. I got the debt. That's what passes for fair these days, I guess. Patricia, my attorney, slid another document across her desk. 15 years examining federal land records. She said, "And you didn't see this coming?" I told her. Turns out, I'm better at spotting fraud in someone else's paperwork than my own marriage certificate. She almost smiled. What was I going to do now? She asked. Truth is, at 47, I had nothing but a box of dusty law books, a magnifying glass, and a beat-up pickup with a Federal Land Records Office retired sticker. My pension didn't even cover the rent. Then, as I was walking out into the gray drizzle of Columbus, my phone buzzed a known number. Madison County. Nearly let it ring out. But something told me to answer. Mr. Sheridan, your uncle Tobias passed last Tuesday. You're his sole heir. Tobias. The name barely registered a rumor from some childhood argument I was never meant to hear. My father called him the crazy one, obsessed with paperwork. But now, apparently, I owned a cabin and some land in Madison County. 3 hours drive later, I'm following a hand-drawn map through back roads my GPS wouldn't touch. Turn left at the split oak. Follow the creek bed. Watch for the stone shaped like a pointing hand. By the time I pulled up, the pine woods had swallowed the sun, and the world felt older, cleaner, almost sacred. My inheritance. A cabin barely held together by duct tape. Hope. And spite. Roof rusted. Windows patched with more tape. Paint long gone. Porch groaning under my weight like it was warning me to turn back. But those bone-hewn beams. Fieldstone foundation solid as history. Inside, it smelled like pipe smoke. Old books. And secrets. There on the kitchen table, a letter addressed to me. Shaky but careful handwriting. Colt. They called me crazy for 40 years. I found the truth they've been hiding since 1987. Check the trunk under the floorboards. Don't let them steal what's ours. Tobias. My hands shook. 20 minutes later, I found Ida's steel trunk locked up tight. 3 keys from the estate lawyer's envelope. Inside, survey maps from 1869. Tax receipts. Land grant certificates. A folder labeled Ashford Conspiracy. 198722024. Turns out, Uncle Tobias had been fighting a war while the world called him a crank. By flashlight, I compared the old maps to a current county survey. That's when it hit me. 500 acres of land, including every mansion, pool, park, and the very lake the HOA loved to brag about. All Sheridan property. On paper and by law. Tax receipts told the story page straight through to 1986. Then nothing. That's the same year Thornwood Estates came to life. Courtesy of a lawyer named Marlena Ashford later. Marina Ashford Kessler. 3 days fixing up the cabin. Patching holes. Cleaning the well pump. Rigging up a solar charger. Work kept me sane. Then, on the 4th morning, I heard the whisper of an expensive car white Tesla, carving ruts in my drive. Out stepped Marina herself, looking ready for a cocktail party, not a woodshed showdown. You're trespassing on community-adjacent land, she told me, hand outstretched. Not that I took it. This cabin violates 14 community aesthetic codes, she recited, deadpan, like I was a bad actor in her HOA drama. 30 days, or we do it for you. Lady, your community is invisible from here, I said. We're surrounded by trees. She didn't care. I've removed 23 problem properties, she said, eyes cold and steady. You're number 24? The only question is whether you leave with dignity or in handcuffs. That looked too confident, too practiced. I'd seen it before in the faces of fraudsters who got away with things so long. They forgot it was wrong. She left. 2 days later, Barrett Oaks, the county inspector, showed up, middle-aged, sweat stains. Looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I'm here about code violations, he muttered, flipping through his clipboard. Reported by who? I asked. He looked away. Can't say. An hour later, he handed me a stack of papers, $67,000 in fines for everything from visual blight to septic noncompliance and unpermitted electrical work. I asked, visual blight? Out here? Who? Exactly. Is affected the squirrels? He went red, mumbled, I just follow up on complaints, and took off. Well, they wanted to bury me in paperwork? They had no idea who they were dealing with. I set up trail cameras, filed FOIA requests with every office from county to federal, made sure every document was copied, filed, and sent to people who couldn't quietly lose it. And then the cracks started showing. The county records showed a digital transition in 1987, paper files lost, corrupted, made public domain with a few keystrokes. A memo, buried in the FOIA results, warned, manual verification recommended before approving new development. No follow-up, just a rubber-stamped approval for Thornwood Estates. The Sheridan deed erased from the recording paper, at least. But I had the originals to Tobias's trunk. Deacon Whitmore's secret. Yeah, that's right. Deacon, the very guy who did the digital dirty work, still at the county office, looking like he hadn't slept since the 80s. I found him, and when I said my name, he froze. He agreed to meet at a diner, hands shaking. Turns out, he'd been paid $50,000 to correct. Record said he had a daughter starting college, a mortgage, a wife who needed surgery. They targeted rural families, used the digital transition to erase claims, then developed the land. He said, 23 families I know of, maybe more. He gave me a brass key to a storage unit, number 47, where he'd kept copies of everything, original deeds, memos, receipts, proof that the land grab was organized from the start, all signed, some even by Marina herself, flagged for deletion. She'd been so confident. She put her crimes in writing. But here's where things take a turn. Into Rowan Cafferty, a union electrician who'd worked Thornwood's expansion. She and 46 others never got paid. Kessler Family Shell Company took the contracts, stiffed everyone, and vanished. Labor Board shrugged. DA said not enough evidence. They own people, she told me. You can't fight them through normal channels. She gave me contacts, workers, inspectors, even an investigative journalist, Stellan Ross, who'd been trying to expose the Kesslers for years, but always came up empty when it mattered. Stellan saw my files, his jaw dropped. This is it, he said, but he knew I needed one more ally, Honora Vance, a retired federal judge who'd followed these land thefts for decades. She looked through everything. If you challenge with original federal surveys, every transaction since the fraud becomes void, she told me. But you don't want to throw 312 families out of their homes, do you? I shook my head. Then we attacked the shell company, Sterling Property Management and Paper, just the HOA's management firm. But the money trail leads straight to Marina's accounts. Over $4 million stolen from homeowners on top of the stolen land. I left with a legal strategy and a sense that, for once, the bad guys were on the back foot. When I got back to the cabin, it was clear I'd rattled the hornet's nest. Trail cameras smashed, solar panel ripped out, A condemnation order, nailed to the door signed by Barrett Oakes. Of course, giving me 72 hours to vacate or face arrest. I called Judge Vance. They're scared, she said. Scared people make mistakes. Now, we file a formal boundary challenge with the Federal Land Office, put everything on the record where they can't bury it. That's what we did. Sent copies to the Attorney General, FBI, 3 newspapers. Within days, Marina called an emergency HOA meeting. I watched from the tree line. Residents were restless, skeptical. Then Willa Thornberry, original homeowner, stood up and said, I remember when this was Sheridan land. We ignored Tobias for years. We were wrong. Stellan's expose hit the press front page. Full story. Side-by-side records showing the Sheridan name erased. Money trails leading to Marina. Testimony from workers. Deacon's confession. Within the week, the FBI launched investigations. The IRS froze Sterling's assets. The state AG promised justice. Marina vanished from public view until the night she came walking through the forest to my cabin. Suit torn. Makeup smeared. Pride in ruins. Name your price? She begged. Voice cracking. Everyone has a price. I told her. Give me Harold, your father-in-law. The one running this in 7 states. Testify. Help take down the whole network. And maybe you see daylight again. She nodded. Broken. One condition: I made her reverse the condemnation order first. The final showdown was something to see: township meeting. News cameras. Hundreds packed in. Federal agents at the exits. I presented everything year by year. Document by document. Judge Vance vouched for the evidence, staking her career on it. Marina snapped, yelling at the crowd about trailer parks and making the neighborhood. The FBI agent stood up. Read her rights. Cuffed her in front of the people she'd fooled for so long. Within days, the whole network unraveled. Harold arrested in Florida. Millions seized. 23 families given restitution. Workers paid back. The HOA reborn under honest leadership. I could have demanded everything. Evicted hundreds. Charged outrageous rent. But that would make me just like her. Instead, we offered fair terms. No one forced out. No one bankrupted. Karma works slow, but it lands hard. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of a fixed-up cabin. Solar humming. Spring breeze through the pines. A piece of land finally at peace. I left the 1869 land grant on Uncle Tobias's grave. You never gave up, I told him. And now, everybody knows. You want a moral? Here's what I learned. The hard way. The truth doesn't care about money or power or family names. It just waits for someone stubborn enough to drag it into the light. Sometimes justice is slow. Sometimes it feels impossible. But it's always worth fighting for. So, tell me, what's the wildest thing you've seen an HOA try to pull? Ever seen justice served in your neck of the woods? Drop your story below. I'd love to hear it.
The original survey places the marker here,
Not here.
This changes everything. We move at dawn.